Hello everyone, welcome to today's story. Tonight, we step into a world where silence speaks louder than words, where love trembles under the weight of a single secret. Tuna's ex-mother-in-law has been caught, but in her confession she reveals a shocking truth that threatens to shatter the fragile bond between Alex and Tuna. What is this secret that could turn love into suspicion? Can Alex and Tuna overcome the doubt, or will this revelation tear them apart forever? And most haunting of all, was it truth, or just a cruel misunderstanding? Stay with us until the very end to uncover the hidden layers of this emotional storm. And if you enjoy these stories, don't forget to subscribe. Help us reach 1,000 followers and keep this journey alive together. The night air in the police station was heavy, a silence broken only by the shuffle of papers and the faint hum of a ceiling fan. Under the dim light, Mrs. Giang Thi Du sat with her hands trembling, her eyes fixed on some invisible memory. When the officer pressed her again, she suddenly raised her head. Her voice cracked like an old branch in the wind. "I only wanted Henry back," she whispered, her gaze distant. "But you must know, your bond is built on a lie." The words cut through the room like a cold blade. Alex stiffened, the breath in his chest refusing to move. Tuna's heart sank, a chill running along her spine. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt, the wooden desk, the harsh light, the echo of her words, all distorted like reflections rippling on a disturbed pond. Alex turned toward Tuna, his eyes searching, yet unable to ask the question aloud. She opened her lips, but no sound came, only the silent ache of disbelief. The police officer looked on, pen hovering above paper, unsure whether to capture her confession or her collapse. Beneath the weight of her own guilt, Mrs. Du wept, muttering apologies to the child she clung to in memory, to the past she could not undo. But her revelation now hung between Alex and Tuna like a storm cloud, threatening to break. In that moment, no chains, no locked doors, no uniforms could contain the chaos she had unleashed, because the true prison was already built, inside their hearts. The room emptied, yet silence refused to leave. Outside, the evening bled into darkness, swallowing the edges of the world. Alex and Tuna walked side by side but felt oceans apart. The echo of Mrs. Du's words lingered like smoke that would not clear. Alex stopped beneath the flickering streetlight, his shadow stretching long on the cracked pavement. He turned to face her, eyes clouded with doubt and pain. "Is it true?" The question trembled in his throat, yet never fully left his lips. Tuna, sensing it without hearing, shook her head, her voice trembling with an urgency that felt like prayer. "Alex, you mustn't believe her. She wants to break us apart." Her hands reached for his, but he hesitated. The brief pause between his breath and his movement was enough to wound her deeper than words. The silence between them became an unspoken battlefield. Every glance was a plea, every hesitation a scar. Around them, the night wind carried the scent of damp earth, the sound of crickets rising like a choir of witnesses to their unraveling. Tuna's tears traced lines down her cheeks, shimmering under the faint glow, while Alex looked away, jaw tight, as if bracing against an invisible storm. Love and doubt collided within him, like two rivers forced into the same bed, carving sharp edges into the soil of his heart. And yet, beneath the hurt, a fragile thread still bound them. A memory, a child's cry, a promise not yet broken. reminding them that even in the shadow of betrayal, there was still something worth holding on to. The night stretched on, heavy as a forgotten hymn. Tuna sat by the window of the farmhouse, her body still, but her mind unraveling. Outside, rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady, tracing rivers across the glass. Each drop mirrored the ache in her chest, the silent question of whether her love had already slipped through Alex's hands. She closed her eyes, and memories rose like lanterns in the dark. The first time Alex carried Henry in his arms, his face softened with a tenderness she had never seen before. The quiet evenings when they shared simple meals, when their laughter filled the spaces that once echoed with loneliness. Those were not illusions, she told herself. Those were real. Yet now, every memory felt fragile, as though Mrs. Dew's words had cracked them like porcelain. Doubt seeped in, eroding what once felt unshakable. She pressed her palms together, whispering into the silence, as though speaking to the night might hold the answers Alex would not take from her lips. Beyond the window, the trees swayed under the storm, branches bowing low, roots gripping the soaked earth. They seemed to understand her struggle, how one could bend without breaking, how love could endure even when battered by doubt. But she also knew that even the strongest roots could rot if the storm lasted too long. As she turned from the window, her reflection stared back at her, eyes weary, but still carrying the flicker of hope. Somewhere in that reflection, she searched for strength to fight not only for Henry, but for Alex and for the fragile bond that held them. Alex wandered alone beneath the pale wash of moonlight, each step heavy on the dirt road that led away from the farmhouse. The night pressed close around him, alive with the chorus of crickets and the rustle of leaves. Yet inside, there was only silence, a silence so dense it threatened to suffocate. He stopped at the edge of the field where the tall grass swayed like restless waves. His chest rose and fell with the weight of unspoken questions. Mrs. Dew's words replayed, sharp and relentless, carving doubt into the marrow of his bones. Could love be so fragile that a single confession could unravel it? Closing his eyes, he saw Tuna's face, her tears, her trembling hands reaching for him. He remembered the warmth of her presence, the unspoken trust that had once anchored his soul. But now, that anchor felt frayed, pulled loose by suspicion he could not control. The field stretched endless before him, but all he saw was the distance growing between them. He clenched his fists, as though gripping something invisible, desperate to hold on to a truth he could no longer touch. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying voices that sounded almost like echoes of his own doubts. A single firefly drifted past, its light faint but insistent, hovering before vanishing into the night. Alex watched it disappear, wondering if faith was like that light, small, fleeting, yet enough to guide a man through darkness if only he chose to follow. And yet, standing there, he realized the battle he faced was not against Tuna, nor against Mrs. Dew, but against the shadows in his own heart. Morning came draped in mist, yet for Tuna the air was heavy, unkind. She walked through the narrow paths of the village, basket in hand, but whispers clung to her like thorns. Faces turned, voices dropped, and rumors spread faster than the morning smoke rising from kitchens. They spoke of Henry's disappearance, of Mrs. Dew's arrest, of the secret that cast a shadow between her and Alex. Each word, though faint, pierced her like a needle. Maybe it's true. Did she deceive him? Poor Alex. The judgments of strangers weighed more than silence. They built an invisible wall around her, pressing in from every side. At the market, even the fruit in her basket seemed too heavy, as if echoing the burden of her heart. She tried to smile, to meet the eyes of neighbors, but the glances she received were sharp with pity and suspicion. The village, once a place of simple rhythms, had turned into a mirror of her isolation. Back at the farmhouse, she placed her hands on Henry's empty cradle, tracing the edges of the wood as though touch alone could summon him back. The cradle creaked under her fingers, a hollow sound that deepened her solitude. What hurt her most was not the whispers, but Alex's absence. His silence was louder than the crowd, cutting deeper than their suspicion. He had always been her refuge, her strength against the world. Now, with him distant, she felt like a lone tree battered by winds, roots straining to hold on. And yet, somewhere deep within, she whispered to herself, "Truth will endure, even if love falters." In the dim light of the detention room, Mrs. Dew sat with her hands folded, her fingers restless, as though weaving invisible threads. The metal bars cast long shadows across her face, and in their shifting lines she looked both fragile and unyielding. She spoke to no one at first, her eyes fixed on the memory of a child's laughter. Then, softly, as if confessing to the silence itself, her words spilled out. "I only wanted to protect him," she murmured. "Henry deserves a future untouched by her mistakes." Her voice trembled, but her conviction cut sharp. The officers wrote her statement, yet their eyes flicked uneasily toward Alex, who stood near the doorway. Every syllable she uttered pressed deeper into his uncertainty. Was this the voice of a repentant grandmother, or a manipulator who knew exactly where to strike? Tuna, allowed only a glimpse through the bars, could hear fragments of her voice. Each word was a thorn, reopening wounds she thought had scarred over. Her knees weakened, and she gripped the frame of the door, refusing to crumble in front of those who doubted her. Mrs. Dew's tears finally came, streaking her face as she whispered apologies to Henry, apologies tangled with blame for Tuna. "Your father is gone because of her. Do you understand? I only did what I had to." The room chilled, heavy with doubt. Even in chains, she managed to unravel the fragile thread between Alex and Tuna, leaving them with a single, haunting question. Was she revealing truth or planting poison? And in that question lay the heart of their torment, uncertainty more brutal than loss itself. The night returned with its quiet weight, wrapping the farmhouse in shadows. Alex and Tuna sat across from one another at the wooden table, the lantern between them flickering as if uncertain which way the flame would lean. The silence stretched, broken only by the creak of wood and the faint hum of cicadas outside. Tuna's eyes were swollen, her voice raw but steady. "Do you believe her?" The words trembled in the air, fragile and dangerous. Alex looked down, fingers tracing the grain of the table. His heart fought within itself, between memory and suspicion, between the tenderness he had lived and the doubt now seated inside him. He wanted to reach for her, yet something in him held back, as if touch might betray him. The lantern's glow caught her tears, turning them into glistening rivers that ran unchecked. I have nothing but my truth, she whispered. If you lose faith in me, then even finding Henry will not bring me back. His chest tightened. The woman before him was not an enemy, not a stranger. She was the one who had stood with him in storms, the one whose hands had soothed his restless nights. And yet, one voice from the past had shaken that foundation. Alex finally lifted his gaze. In his eyes flickered a war he had not won. Their love hung on the edge of a question that had no answer tonight. Outside, the night wind stirred the fields, whispering that trust, once cracked, was harder to mend than stone. But it also murmured that love, if chosen, could outlast even storms of doubt.
Câu chuyện mở ra từ biến cố Henry bị mẹ chồng cũ của Tử Na, bà Giang Thị Diệu, lén bắt đi. Sau khi cảnh sát bắt giữ, bà bất ngờ tiết lộ một bí mật gây chấn động, gieo vào lòng Alex và Tử Na những nghi ngờ sâu sắc. Tử Na đau đớn khi vừa mất con, vừa bị chính người thân dùng lời nói chia rẽ. Alex dù luôn là chỗ dựa cũng bắt đầu lao đao, không biết nên tin là tình yêu hiện tại hay là cáo buộc. Can nghiệp, sự hoang mang, im lặng, những ánh mắt xa cách trở thành cao trào. Mối quan hệ đứng giữa bờ rạn nứt. Liệu đây có phải sự thật? Việc che giấu hay chỉ là hiểu lầm độc ác?